pledge. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We just have a few announcements today. The Joint Education Committee will meet tomorrow, August 13th at 4 p.m. in this room. The meeting is open to the public and the agenda is published on the Board of Education webpage. KCS Human Resources Executive Director will be attending electronically this evening in case we need him to address questions or provide information during the meeting. And we have a few changes to our agenda. Board members, you received information via email on Monday, but I wanted to review the additions to the agenda. And as always, we can have discussion on these items as they are read. Under board policies, item 7B has been added. Ms. Satterfield has worked with the law department on a new policy regarding masks or face coverings for students, employees, and visitors to our schools. The proposed policy is attached to the agenda. The KCS administration was notified by the Tennessee Department of Education of the annual award of the McKinney-Vento grant benefiting our homeless students. The TDOE requested the grant assurances be returned by August 15th, so that item has also been added to the grant section of the agenda for our consideration as item 8I. Finally, the Florida virtual school contract that Superintendent Thomas informed us of during our August 5th work session has been added as item 9D under contacts. And are there any other requested changes to this agenda? Okay, do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Norman, a second by Ms. Satterfield. Discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, and also just I always forget to say this at regular sessions, but if you are watching, please know that we also discussed this agenda last week at our work session. Now, I would like to ask Ms. Renee Kelly, who is our Chief of Staff, to come forward for the introduction of our Minority Advisory Council.
Good afternoon. I didn't want to, Scott, I hated to take away your mic. I'll be very brief. In an effort to honor social distancing, I'll introduce the MAC members that are present. They will come in increments of 5, and then we'll excuse themselves. Many of you know this, but the purpose of the MAC is to provide an important voice for certified minority educators in the district's decision-making process, and to provide the superintendent with minority teachers' insights, suggestions, and perspectives on critical educational issues. The MAC, the Minority Advisory Council, will enable better educational and administrative decisions, and ultimately, that's why we're all here, will lead to greater student learning outcomes. We have with us this evening Ashley Anthony. And Ashley is a kindergarten teacher at Gibbs Elementary. Alejandra Berry, who is an English language arts teacher at Carter Elementary. Tanya Coates, our KCEA president. Jordan Culp, who will be serving as an administrative assistant at South Doyle Middle School. And Chris Douglas from Ritta Elementary. Thank you all. Derek Griffin is with us. He is employed at L&N STEM. He's an 11th grade U.S. history teacher. Laurie Griffin works at Carter Elementary School, and she serves as a 5th grade math and social studies teacher. Paula Hancock is with us this evening. She teaches math at Carnes Middle. Miss Melody Hawkins is with us, and she is an 8th grade science teacher at Vine Middle. And Sonia Cowell is here with us, and she teaches 6th grade science at Cedar Bluff Middle. Thank you all. Thank you. Kelly Layden is here with us also. She's a pre-K teacher at Maynard Elementary. Catherine Mincer is here. She teaches third grade at Seymour Green. Kayla Montgomery is with us this evening. She is an assistant principal at Gibbs Middle. And Florence Jai is a system-wide teacher, and she's here with us this evening. Oh, and Stephanie, I'm sorry, because that's not 5. Sorry, Stephanie. Stephanie is here with us, and she works at Fairgarden. Thank you all, and thank you for being back. Thank you. And then our last but certainly not least group is Michael Rogers. He is a special education teacher at Maynard Elementary. We have Sophia Roth. She's an administrator at Fulton High School. Heather Blakemore serves as a school counselor at Austin East High School. Victoria Tudor is a kindergarten teacher at Halls Elementary School. And Antoinette Williams is a 7th grade social studies teacher at West Valley Middle. Dee, I didn't know you were coming. And Dee Thomas is here with us and wasn't on my list, but I'm glad you're here. Thank you all. Thanks for your willingness to serve. Thank you. Okay, Terry, help me with Scott's mic. Thanks, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Kelly. Okay, board members, I would like to ask for just a few minutes to stray from our agenda. As you know, tonight is the last regularly scheduled meeting for 2 of our boards, and I wanted to take a moment to recognize them. Our current District 3 board member, Tony Norman, has served on the board since 2016. As the representative of our 3rd district, anyone who knows Tony knows he cares deeply about public education. As a teacher for over 30 years, county commissioner and commission chairman, he has a deep knowledge of Knox County, and his passion for community, teachers, and students is apparent. Tony has graciously served as one of our certified sick bank trustees for multiple years, as well as a member of our ethics committee and the joint education committee. Please help me express our sincerest appreciation to Mr. Norman for his service to our community and our schools. And we have a lovely plaque for you. If we can come forward and have our picture made, and if everybody will come, and we'll just try to kind of distance ourselves in this area. Okay, our current District 6 board member, Terry Hill, has served since 2014. In addition to her official capacity as an elected board member, Terry served as chair in 2018-2019. She has also served in multiple board roles, including service on the Ethics Committee, the Joint Education Committee, and the Superintendent's Evaluation Committee. Terry also served as our board representative for the coordinated school health and class, and she has served as a certified sick bank trustee. Like Tony, Terry worked with KCS for many years as a social worker, both at the school level and as a part of the central office administration. She is actually leaving us during the middle of her current term because she has been elected to serve her district as a Knox County Commissioner. Congratulations, Terry. Our community is blessed with Terry's leadership. So please, once again, help express our appreciation to Terry for her years of service to our community and our schools. Okay, Ms. Coatney, we'll have the reading of the agenda, please.
Item 6, consent agenda.
We have a motion by Ms. Hill, a second by Mr. Norman. Discussion. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries.
7A, approve second reading of Knox County Board of Education Policy D-110, Annual Operating Budget as amended.
We have a motion by Mr. Norman, a second by Ms. Babb. Discussion. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries.
Item 7B, approve first reading of new Knox County Board of Education Policy C-240, face coverings.
And we have someone for public forum, Mr. Gordon Gibson. If you'll just state your name and county of residence.
My name is Gordon Gibson. I live in Knoxville in the old Park Junior High at 523 North Bertrand Street. It's a great building and we're enjoying it. I wanted to speak today because I think this requirement of mask wearing with carefully carved out exceptions is an important one for the schools. We don't want Knoxville Community Schools to show up the way that school system in Georgia just has, with 900 students and teachers now in quarantine. This takes care of that kind of thing possibly happening here. This has an effect on me. I'm in one of those affected categories. I'm at risk as an 80-year-old. I don't want an explosion of infections here in Knox County because it could reach me. If we keep infections under control, I'm safer. So I think this is a very important policy. I hope you will embrace it. I'm delighted that my representative on the board is the one who introduced it. And while I'm up here, let me briefly say that there's another thing that I hope you do vote for. That's 10E, the resolution for suspension of mandatory testing. I don't think this school year has room for it. I'm glad that the superintendent has recommended this and assume that you'll be supporting that. But I'm not happy about the idea of outsourcing our online instruction to Florida Virtual. I hope that can be postponed until teachers who have taken leave because they're afraid of infection can be recruited to teach off-site now that that's possible, and possibly some recent retirees. I think our students will be better served if they're taught by Knox County educators who are under the direct supervision of this board and the school administration. But first item, speaking to, is the requirement that we all do this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we have a motion.
So moved. Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Ms. Satterfield, a second by Ms. Owen. Ms. Satterfield?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to just give my line of thinking behind presenting face covering policy, and then we can go from there. So the district is opting to reopen schools, and I think it's ours in making that district level decision to reopen schools. And if that's the course that we're taking, I also think we need to make a district level decision with enforcing as much as possible to keep people safe within our schools. And so that is that's a reason why. Also, I noticed that we have some schools that are 100% mask only. Like if you're coming into the building, you must have a mask on. And then we have other schools that are abiding by what is in the reopening plan, that is when social distancing is feasible or available or can do it. I don't have the language pulled up, but you know what I'm talking about. And so I think that that's a recipe for disaster, because you're going to have different schools doing different things and different communities doing different things. And then we have an open, and then we have a uptick in one community to where the other community could possibly be safe. We don't know. So that's another reason. And then third, when I asked about a month ago at our last board meeting about how we're handling the mask situation, there was a lot of people were just unsure of what this looks like. And if we're unsure at the leadership level and at the board level, then I'm concerned with what the unsureness looks like in the classroom level. And so I think that, and then when also it was asked, what happens if a child completely refuses, it was suggested that they use a dress code policy, and the dress code policy leads to suspension. And so that is also where I think we need clear guidelines that aren't punitive to what happens if masks are not enforced. In the policy itself, if we do take the approach to do the policy, I'm completely open to amendments and changing and what direction it needs to go into, because this is one person's concept that I worked with also with Gary. But I think everyone's input needs to be shared with that. But the biggest thing that I recommend is that we do have a policy in place that doesn't leave room for people to just do what they decide that they want to do in the classrooms. So that's my line of thinking, and that's where I stand. And I'm not going to be as, that's just where I stand.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Satterfield. Ms. Bounds?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Personally, I think this policy is too restrictive, but as I read through my emails today, I wanted to share the thought of one of the emails, but there were many that were similar, that said this new mask mandate that is happening on first reading tonight is not fair or well thought out. This is not what you and we explained to parents when they made their decision of online versus virtual. It is not what teachers knew when they made their decision of returning to work. It is not what went out to parents in our back-to-school reopening plans, and I think it is extremely unfair to do this kind of adjustment now. So I won't be supporting this.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Mounds. Ms. Owen?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think the real issue that we have with different interpretations is one of communication. Because when we really semantically break this down, this policy says the exact same thing as our opening plan for the district. It says it differently, but it says the same thing. All of the same things are in here. They're just worded slightly differently. The issue comes from some individual schools that sent out opening plans that did not match our district plan. And when we have individual schools interpreting things because we've been unclear at the district level, that leads to problems and that leads to misunderstandings. So looking at this policy, I can't find anything in here that isn't in our opening plan. I've talked to principals throughout my district and some others, and they are also supportive of the plan. They did ask, let me pull it up here. They did ask that there be language that allows students to remove masks when outdoor at recess if social distancing guidelines are met. And I think that language is here in line 28. It says determined by the principal in consultation with the teacher, and that permission would not be unreasonably withheld. And that's for specific instructional needs and activities. I think that's perfectly reasonable, and that is also clear in our opening plan. So all of the things that I've seen in emails from parents and from principals is supportive of a policy that clearly matches our opening plan. And this does match our district level opening plan. The problem is with some individual school plans, and I think we need to take a serious look at those. Thank you.
Ms. Christie?
Yeah, I just have a question. So when we say for students who refuse to wear a mask and the consequences to that, verbal warning, second offense, verbal warning, quarantine from general population and parent pickup, how is that going to be documented? Is that a disciplinary action? I mean, if the parent has to pick them up, is that going to be considered a suspension?
Mr. Thomas?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. It would be documented like our regular disciplinary offenses are documented, so that way we keep up with the numbers.
So if we had an elementary student that repeatedly took their mask off and was sent home multiple times, I mean, what would happen with that student?
Oh, to follow the consequences within the discipline policy that currently that the board has approved. So again, that would vary. I think it depend on the offenses and warnings and so forth. So a progressive disciplinary action would be taken by the assistant principal. Are you asking me what specifically will be done?
Well, I'm just wondering if we're going to be expelling students for not wearing or for taking masks off at the, I'm thinking younger students. I'm thinking kindergarten, first, second grade. And what the consequences if, we have to send them home multiple times, what?
Well, and again, I think using good judgment on something like that, our principals are very adept at using good judgment. So I think in terms of the offense, the warning and looking at the situation, taking that into consideration. So, again, we've not done this before, so it'll be new, but we just know from the standpoint of the data, the scientific data, that if we want to try to prevent and stop the spread, then the importance is wearing the mask, and I think we have to have a way to enforce that, obviously. So I think until we get into it and actually get some experience with it behind us, we'll know more maybe after the first week or two of school. But but I think our folks will use good judgment in terms of enforcing the policy and also the discipline that goes along with it. So it's going to take some getting used to, obviously. It's brand new. And I've been trying to say too along the way, you know, if you've got a child that's going to be in person in school, get a mask and have them get used to wearing that, because that's what we're going to do to try to protect each other. You know, our teachers, our staff, and our students. So,
and another question is about the, I guess the last paragraph, where principals shall address visitors who refuse to wear masks or face coverings. You know, I did have an administrator reach out to me saying, you know, they don't want that to be at their discretion. It should just be you have to wear a mask if you're coming in the building. You know, to the other end of that, they don't want to be policing adults coming into the building too.
yes.
And so I don't know if that would be necessary to have that. And then the third question was from a parent who is asking if there's room in a classroom, does it still apply? Like if you might have 10 kids in a classroom that are socially distanced, can they take that mask off? Would that fall under the principal and teacher's discretion, or?
That would be the principal's decision, yes.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Hill?
Thank you, Ms. Horn. Mr. Thomas, is it your opinion as our superintendent that a policy is needed?
I do support the policy just because, again, without it, there may be challenges. I know Mr. Dupler's worked with Ms. Satterfield on this, and I think it's good to have a policy in place.
All right. I do, as Ms. Owen stated, see that so much of this is things that are already in the opening plan that the schools put out. And it is a shame that schools that are not following this, which I do think are the exception, can't be dealt with individually instead of having to do something on a blanket level. That said, though, I do appreciate the fact that sometimes policy is necessary because it strengthens the position of an administrator when they make these kind of statements. So I do, as much as I hate to add restrictions, I do see where there could be some merit to this. I do like Ms. Christie's suggestion about the stating that masks are required of visitors, and then if the principal has reason to say they don't need one, they certainly can, but that initially I would support that policy, that change being put in the policy. And also dealing with the discipline issues of students that may refuse to wear masks and continually refuse to wear masks. Mr. Thomas, is it possible that if this is in fact the attitude that a child or perhaps a child parent may take, and we probably will run into this, that we could require that student in lieu of suspending to enroll in virtual school? I mean, can that not just be what the action will be?
I think we'd have to look at that on an individual basis and see what the circumstances around it would be. I think first preference would be, you know, if you're not wearing a mask, you know, hey, you're gonna have to be physically distanced. So provided that the classroom would allow that, but you know, and just have conversations with the parent, child, and look at each individual situation. I think so. It could be a situation where virtual learning might be an option, but again, I'd rather look at that on an individual basis.
All right. Thank you.
Ms. Babb?
Yes, when I looked at this policy, I mean, the people that to me are the most involved in what's going on at the schools and trying to come up with their plans are the principals. So I really wanted their opinion. And so I sent this to all of the principals in my district, and there are 8 schools. And 4, I did not hear back from. 3, I immediately heard back from that they appreciated this. There were some minor tweakings and some things like the thing about the recess was brought up by one, but I think that that's covered in the policy and stuff like that. So 3 definitely did. One responded that they didn't think it was necessary, and then I didn't hear back from 4. So I did feel like at least 3 of my principals were very strongly about this. And then I did hear from a few people that were against this face covering policy. But one thing I would have to note is I look at the controversy over July 1st when our county decided to do a mandate, and oh my gosh, it was all over the place what people thought about it. But it was amazing once it was put down there and once the signs went up, most of our community has been very compliant. And sometimes you just actually have to put the rules out there to get people to follow them. And, and I know this is one of those things that we have a lot of disagreement in our community on, and I get that, and I respect that people feel differently about it. But to try to get schools back safely, I do respect this, and I respected the opinions that I got from my principals.
Ms. Christie?
Yeah, I would just like to, I guess, piggyback off what Terry said. I do like the idea of if you have a repeat offender, at least giving them the option to do virtual. And my concern is, it's not that I'm against the masks in the schools. It's when we rolled out the reopening plan and we asked the question, what if a student won't wear a mask? It was, well, it's going to be positive reinforcement. It won't be punitive. And that's what parents heard when they signed up for this. So, they might have realized that their students might struggle with it, but because they heard us say that it wouldn't be punitive, they went ahead and chose to do in person. So I do feel like, because obviously we're changing that a little bit now. So I do think that we need to give parents some options rather than just multiple suspensions.
Okay. Ms. Owen, I don't know who you had their mic down first.
I wanted to directly speak to that.
Okay.
Ms. Satterfield?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Jennifer. I agree. This is a reason why I want something in place for guidance on what happens, because I don't want high suspension rates. So if as a team, as a collective, we can come up with that incentive to put in this policy, I support that. But when I was told that it will go towards the dress code policy, and the dress code policy itself leads to in-school suspension and multiple days at home suspension. You have the opportunity to correct the behavior, or someone brings you clothes. If you don't do that, or if they don't do that, then you're in ISS, in school suspension. So I support that change. I just no one has been able to give me an answer of what that looks like.
Ms. Owen?
I just wanted to offer a friendly amendment. And before I do that, I would also quote a principal as saying that consistency or lack of is why we need this. And so the amendment speaks to Ms. Christie's concern. And if we can change the last paragraph on the second page to say visitors shall wear face coverings at all times, those who refuse may be removed from the building. And I think shall wear covers requirement, and may be removed can also cover those people who may have some reason that they can't wear a face covering, and then the principal can determine that, or whomever their designee may be.
Can you read that one more time?
Sure. Visitors shall wear face coverings at all times. Those who refuse may be removed from the building.
Okay, I don't see a second.
I'm just offering a friendly
Okay.
amendment if it will be.
Oh, I'm sorry. So, Ms. Satterfield,
Yes.
are you okay with that?
Yes.
Thank you, Ms. Owen, for the reminder. Okay. All right, and do we have discussion on that, Mr. McMillan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have no problem with your amendment, Ms. Owens, but it seems to me that maybe we might be making too much out of this. out of this particular aspect. We have security there on the premises, and the principal could call security. You know, we don't have to put that in writing. Or if they still refuse, then he could, he or she or somebody, either security or the administrator, could call law enforcement at that point. But I don't think that needs to be in the policy. I think that, you know, surely we've got enough faith in our administrators to follow through with something like that. Now, I do have a little, and I support masks, wearing a mask. If they have room, once they get in the classroom, and the principal approves it, that they can social distance, that's a different thing. But while they're in the hallway, on the bus, at lunch, you know, other than just eating, I think they should wear a mask. And I also, having spent 30-something years in the classroom, I think that you're going to have some kids, for whatever reason, that just will test you and will just not, you know, they can't make me do that. What are they going to do? Call my mama and send me home? I'll be back in the morning. That seems, you know, I don't want to get into positive and negative reinforcement, but I do think that there has to be some consequences that the students are aware of, and that they have a little bit of fear of. That they, well, maybe fear is a too strong a word, but they don't want to go through this. Now, you know, I'm not recommending this, but this quarantine deal, who decides on that? Where the principal?
Well, that suggestion came from, I know that some of our schools are, if a child is struggling with the mask, they're creating these spaces for students to take a moment to get in and go, like a space room essentially. But I guess again, asking for support on how to develop the policy that's going to work best for Knox County schools, if we need to put in there that at the discretion of the principal or the discretion of the teacher, to determine that from the general population. I know it's going to, what we have now, what I've heard from principals is that masks are required. If the child refuses, the teacher calls the principal then takes it under the control and either call home or they sit in the principal's office, X, Y, and Z. So that's what some schools are doing. I think, and I'm okay with that as well. The biggest thing is that schools are doing individual things. And if we're opening schools at a district level, then we need to have a district level policy regarding the safety of the schools. So I support whatever direction we need to go.
I don't disagree, except I think it should be consistent. And maybe did you say a half hour or did I misunderstand? Well, maybe that might be a little light. I don't know. I don't have an exact thing that I want to offer. And I know this wouldn't work in every situation, but this has been probably, 30 years ago, 35. Probably nobody in this room, except for Bob and myself, know this individual. But Billy K. Nicely was principal at Doyle, and it was called Doyle in those days. And he had two boys that had been sent into the office, freshmen, for scuffling in the hallway or something. And these were good kids. They had never been in trouble. And he walked back to his office, he said, trying to figure out something that would punish them and they'd get the message. And at the same time, he didn't want to be too harsh on it. So he put them in conference room and made them stay in there for 3 days. Brought their lunch to them, and he played music for him, played Jingle Bells for 3 days. And he said he never saw those kids back in the office. Now, I mean, no, I'm not suggesting that. But, you know, it could be something without being extremely harmful, as long as they're aware of it. I guess the biggest thing is that they wouldn't want to do it. Now, you know, you could do something like after the third time, have the parent come and pick them up, as long as it was before 1 o'clock or before 12 o'clock. If it was after, and have to get off from work, come pick them up the next day at 12 o'clock. I'd say, I'm just guessing, of course, but I would say that if a parent had to split their work shift and go get that kid, I doubt seriously that they would repeat it too many times. Now, you might have some that don't work, so it wouldn't matter, you know. But that's what concerns me. I'm for masks, but I do think you have to have some reasonable consequences. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McMillan. And I'll just make a few comments. I think I've heard from parents, I've heard from teachers, and I've heard from principals that I reached out to, specifically the principals, to get their feedback. And they were positive about, they had positive comments about having a policy and having some direction on consequences and that kind of thing. I think that the thing that I heard from parents and teachers was what Ms. Christie had said already, that this is not what we signed up for, that this was not what they, thought they were signing on to, and that it's another change. And I really think that it's more probably the way it's phrased, more so than a change. I don't think that it's as much a change as it is the way it's phrased, if I'm understanding it correctly, which I would like to see it spell that out a little more clearly so that it's more congruent with what the reopening plan says. And I also heard from principals, like Ms. Owen said, that they would like, I think it needs to say specifically, if kids are outside with distance, that they don't have to wear a mask. So we probably need to add that, because I heard specifically about recess. And then the other, and I'm looking at an old version of the policy, but in number 3, it basically says that gives latitude to the schools to allow kids to remove their masks when distancing occurs, if I'm reading it correctly, if that is appropriate for the, whatever they're being directed to do. I think that's what it says, but I don't think it's clear enough. I don't think if that's what it says, I think it should more closely match what our reopening plan said, if that's the intention of it. So do you want to speak to that, Ms. Satterfield?
Yeah, I think you're actually absolutely right. And I guess that leads for interpretation as well. But I know that in some schools, when that they're offering mask breaks, and so the autonomy for a teacher by case is the opportunity for them to provide mask breaks if necessary.
Okay.
That was the line of thinking there.
Okay, thank you. One of the issues, that I heard, and I'm sure that it's shared by many, is, a lot of the elementary teachers and a lot of the teachers in general have been tasked with going into their room and creating space. So they've taken out furniture and they've done all that they can to try to, get as much space between students. So if we have teachers who have done that successfully, because that's what the reopening plan called for, then if that's not what we're saying, that is certainly a change. And I think that that we need to, that it needs to be recognized as a change. So I guess that would be my next question. So and here's an example. for a school that has thought through their theater class, their chorus, and they've decided to use the auditorium where they can literally have 15 feet between kids who are singing. And so they've addressed it with that. So that this number 3 would accommodate that, that particular situation. Would that be correct? Mr. Dupler, do you want to weigh in on that?
Yes, please. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll be happy to weigh in. So let me talk about first the purpose of a board policy. Purpose of a board policy has always been to give direction across the district, but also to be somewhat general. Historically, board policies have not been so specific that they break down each and every rule and regulation for a school. A school would then look to administrative procedures for that, would look to their handbooks for that, would look to, in this case, the reopening plan. In talking with Ms. Satterfield, the purpose of this particular policy was to be read in conjunction with the reopening plan. And there are certain areas in here which are intentionally general to give principals the latitude they need at their schools to do what they need to do. So for instance, what's been discussed, indoor versus outdoor. This policy specifically covers indoor. It doesn't cover outdoor. So if you're outdoors and you're socially distanced, guess what? This policy doesn't apply at all. That takes care of your recess. And again, this needs to match the reopening plan. I mean, it's number 3 now, but you were correct, Ms. Horn, that the previous version had a little bit different language, but that was in there just for the purpose of classes that would need to have masks removed. For instance, band. I mean, that's a big one. Chorus would be the same thing. Probably a PE class, and there could be many different classes. I mean, frankly, if you're spaced out and the principal and the teachers can talk about that. The policing the adults, that amendment's been read into the record, and that's not a problem. Again, the purpose there was to have the principal have his or her control of her building and wouldn't have to automatically throw somebody out. But I think with the language that's been suggested, that would work fine too. So that's the purpose of the plan. And I was thinking there might have been something else. Okay, quarantine. That word was used because, intentionally, because again, that could look different from school to school. A school could have a particular place for quarantining children, could be a particular part of a classroom, could be all sorts of, a partition, could be all sorts of things. Again, this is an attempt to make something district-wide that will still look a little different from school to school. So.
Okay, thank you. And I guess part of my, and I had, underlined the word inside, that this is inside, but we all know that when things aren't stated, then they, people assume that this goes for the whole, outside as well. So, so I guess that's why I just want to know, Mr. Thomas, you said you supported this plan. So the intention behind number 3, which let me just read it for people who are not looking at it. It says students, employees, and visitors may remove masks or face coverings on a case-by-case basis for specific instructional needs or other activities as determined by the principal in consultation with the teacher, and permission will not be unreasonably withheld, in which case the teacher will utilize appropriate social distancing measures. So is the intent of that, would your understanding be that it does line up with what we've stated in the reopening plan, which says that you need a mask unless there is if you cannot maintain social distancing? This is just a more pointed way to say it so that it's so that the teacher's working with principal. Is that
Right,
correct?
that's correct. And then I guess there's lot more specificity here than the plan was a little bit more general in terms of saying physical distancing, but this is a little more specific, but that would be correct.
Okay,
So
so you don't see it as being different than the reopening plan?
I don't.
Okay. Okay. All right. I know Ms. Satterfield had a comment, and I see Mr. McMillan and Ms. Owen. So Ms. Satterfield, do you want to go next?
I don't think I forgot. Sorry.
Okay, sorry. Okay,
Let's
was
go
Ms.
there.
Owen next? Okay, Ms. Owen.
I was just going to offer a possible amendment that might allay the difficulty in number 3. Looking after the line instructional needs and other activities, Mr. Dubler, would it work to insert a parenthetical that says such as when 6-foot distance can be maintained, outdoor recess, and other appropriately distanced activities?
I think that would give the schools more clarity and provide for less questions.
Does that work for you?
Okay. Ms. Satterfield?
I was also, one person reached, this is one person, so we can, it's what it is. But they also mentioned that how they read it and interpreted it was also for teachers who are doing virtual teaching in the building. So do we need to put for in-person learning? Like, I don't know if that even brings confusion or if I just brought confusion to it.
Well, okay, to your point, I had a question from someone and I forgot it until you said that. So if we have a virtual teacher in the building and the teacher's alone in her room, obviously there's social distancing, right?
So what we did.
But do we need to add, would it be clearer if we add, if you are alone in your room or something to that effect that
I think
it should be apparent, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it should be apparent. Okay. Your social distance. As long as we understand that if you cannot maintain, basically, if you can't maintain social distancing, you need a mask if you don't have a medical reason and blah, blah, blah. Okay. Okay. Mr. McMillan, did you have another comment?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Maybe we should if you're alone in your room, just use common sense.
That would be nice.
Or something. We could use that for some other places too.
I don't think we can mandate that.
Mr. Law Director, I understand what you're saying about the keeping things general. But I guess what concerns me is that we need a degree of consistency, I think. And if one school does this and a school 10, 15 miles down the road does something that's totally different, it's not even in the ballpark in comparison, I don't have a problem with them doing the same type of activities, whatever they may be, for the same amount of time or approximately the same amount of time. But how are we just at the mercy of our administrators? Just have to ask the superintendent to put out an edict to make sure that they do stress this to them, the consistency, because you're not going to satisfy everybody. You just aren't. So you might as well, if you're trying to satisfy everybody, and you alluded to it, Ms. Satterfield, there with one person, you just can't do that. So as I see it, what we need to do is do whatever benefits is consistent and benefits the vast majority of the kids that are present. So, thank you.
Mr. Dupler.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. McMillan, I think this policy, and I think Ms. Satterfield's intent in this policy was to bring some more uniform measures to the district. Now, to your point, Mr. McMillan, is it going to look exactly the same at every school? No, it's not. But if you have one school that is allowing, no masks without social distancing, then this policy will enable Mr. Thomas, the director of schools, to step in and say, hey, school, you need to follow this policy and look similar to all of our other schools. So I mean so I think this policy will give you that benefit. Another thing, let me say this as well, and Ms. Satterfield and I talked about this. So as another amendment, you want to add that you're asking that this policy be waived for second reading because I believe you'd like this to go into effect before the school year starts, correct?
Yes, the next second reading would be on the 2nd September, or even after that, because that's late. I don't know. I don't know. It's on the calendar. But school starts August 24th, and so to even give us a shot of even staying in school, I would like to make the motion to, whenever the time comes, because I think we still have something.
Yeah, not yet.
Okay, to pass it and enforce it before school starts.
Okay, that's helpful though to bring out while we're discussing. I have another question regarding the students who would have the exemption for their medical condition with their IEP or their 504 plan. We're not the way this reads, it makes me concerned that they have to have that written into their IEP before it can be effective. But I don't think that it could be that some students come back to school before they have an IEP for this year, I suppose, or before it's added. Can you address that issue?
I can, thank you. Obviously, if it is in a 504 or an IEP, it needs to be followed. And that's just what that's saying. I mean, but obviously if a student has any type of medical reason, asthma perhaps, or some condition that makes it difficult for them to breathe, then, those accommodations can be made with this policy.
Okay, so they would not have to have a 504 or 90.
You don't have
Okay, all right, thank you. Mr. McMillan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Along the lines of what you were saying, Mr. Duper, I don't think we'd have any administrators that would be so brazen that they wouldn't tell students to wear mask or insist that they wear them at least at the proper time. But if that should occur, then in my opinion, that's a matter for the superintendent to deal with. And he needs to, because of the severity of this situation, it's not just like, oh, I forgot or something. There needs to be serious consequences with the individual that was charged with enforcing and failed to do so. Thank you.
Ms. Babb?
Do we need a second on Ms. Satterfield's amendment to vote on this?
Ms.
point?
Owen had a friendly amendment and Ms. Satterfield was agreeable. Can we have that read back? Does Ms. Courtney have it now?
So the amended motion would be to approve new Board of Education policy C240 with added on page 1 in parenthetical after and other activities, such as when 6-foot distancing can be maintained, outdoor recess and or other appropriately distanced activities, close parentheses. And on page 2, in lines 9 through 11, the language would be replaced with visitors shall wear face coverings at all times, period. Those who refuse may be removed from the building. And then the amendment would also waive second reading.
Okay. With any other discussion? Okay, we have so we're voting on the friendly, we don't need to vote on that because she's agreeable to it. So we're good there. So we're just voting on the policy to approve or not to approve the policy. So, okay, so all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, Ms. Bounds votes no, so we have 8-1, motion carries. Okay.
Item 8A, approve award of Tennessee Department of Education IDEA Partnership Grant for the 2020-21 school year in the amount of $100,000 designated to the provision of real-life work experiences and independent living skills to help young people with significant disabilities make successful transitions to productive adult life.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Norman, a second by Ms. Satterfield. Discussion. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries.
Item 8B, approve award of Tennessee Department of Education IDEA Partnership Grant for the 2020-2021 school year in the amount of $10,000 designated to a district special education early childhood needs assessment to determine district special education preschool related needs.
We have a motion by Mr. Norman, a second by Ms. Satterfield. Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries.
Item 8C, approve award of Tennessee Department of Education IDEA Innovation Grant for the 2020-2021 school year in the amount of $11,420 designated to support implementing innovative ways to remediate for the loss of instruction during school closures for students with disabilities.
We have a motion by Mr. Norman, a second by Ms. Hill. Discussion. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries.
8D, approve award of Tennessee Department of Education voluntary pre-K grant for the 2020-2021 school year in the amount of $2,056,565.24 with required in-kind and matching funds of $686,000.
We have a motion by Mr. Norman, a second by Ms. Satterfield. Discussion. Ms. Hill.
This 686,000 is already budgeted into our budget that we have approved. Is that correct, Mr. Thomas?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that? I had a message about another item on the agenda there. I was trying to.
Certainly. The $686,000 is already approved in our budget.
Yes,
Is that correct?
that's correct.
The money is already there.
Yes.
This isn't new.
Right, that's correct.
Ask. Okay, thank
Okay. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries.
8E, approve amendment to the contract with the Tennessee Department of Education, which was approved by the board on February 12, 2020, to extend the term of the governor's Civic Seal Mini Grant to December 31, 2020.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Norman, a second by Ms. Babb. Discussion. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries.
8F, approved grant contract with the Tennessee Department of Human Services for provision of pre-employment transition services transition school to work program to benefit students with disabilities for the term October 1, 2020 through September 30th, 2021, and receipt of grant funding in the amount of $127,590.
The motion by Mr. Norman, a second by Ms. Hill. Discussion. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries.
Item 8G, approve award of a school alternative feeding equipment grant from the Dairy Alliance for the 2020-2021 school year in the amount of $6,354 designated to the support of alternative feeding models.
Second.
The motion by Mr. Norman, a second by Ms. Babb. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries.
Item 8H, approve award of Public Supermarkets Charities Grant in the amount of $200 for A.L. Watts Elementary School designated to flexible seating and fidgets for sensory breaks.
So moved.
Second.
The motion by Ms. Horn, a second by Mr. Norman. Discussion. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries.
8I, approve award of Tennessee Department of Education McKinney-Vento subgrant for the 2020-2021 school year in the amount of $83,800 designated to the development of educational assistance to meet the unique needs of homeless children and youth.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Norman, a second by Ms. Owen. Discussion. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries.
9A, approve contracts with City Shuttle LLC, Hillard Transport Incorporated, McConkey Transportation Incorporated, and RPM Transit Incorporated for student transportation services, not to exceed funds allocated in the general purpose budget for the term of August 1, 2020 through July 31, 2023, which may be extended for 2 additional years, 1 year at a time, for a total of 5 years.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Norman, a second by Ms. Hill. Discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
9B, approve a contract with Whaley Construction LLC for the South Door High School Pedestrian Bridge Project in the amount of $1,457,957.70 using fiscal year 2020 capital plan funds.
We have a motion by we have a motion by Ms. Christie, a second by Mr. McMillan. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
9C, approve contract with Energy Control Consultants Incorporated for provision of security window film and installation, not to exceed a cost of $500,000 for the term of September 1, 2020 through August 31, 2021, which may be extended for 4 additional years, 1 year at a time, for a maximum of 5 years.
We have a motion by Mr. Norman, a second by Ms. Christie. Discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
9D, approve contract with Florida Virtual School for the purchase of educational software and services for the term of August 10, 2020 through August 9, 2021, at an estimated cost of $1 to $1.5 million for the 2020 fall semester, not to exceed $3 million for the 2020-2021 school year.
Second.
We have a motion by Ms. Satterfield, a second by Ms. Babb. Mr. Thomas?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the board. I think this is where I gave you an update last week, so I want to give you another update in terms of our vacancies and where we are with the Florida Virtual. So as of August 6th last week, I'll run through these elementary, middle, and high. So when we looked at elementary in the in-person vacancies, we had 28. Quest, we were looking to fill 43. Where we are today on in-person is 18, so from 28 to 18, and then 27 Quest, so from 43 to 27. When you look at middle school, 17 in-person vacancies, we're down to 9. When you look at Quest, we were 10 vacancies, we're down to 4.5 now. In high school, in person, we were 24 vacancies, so 22 now. We were at 46 with Quest, and we're down to 12. So again, just amazing progress. And let me brag on our folks and compliment our folks. Now, Dr. Riswick and his team, Ms. Garrett, Principal Hahn, also Ms. Thompson and Mr. Trent, the work that they've done, and also with our HR folks, they've done an amazing job, really, of whittling down vacancies. And these numbers right now are still not exactly correct. I think they're a little bit lower based on what's happened today. So we've really made great progress in terms of narrowing down vacancies. So if you look at the total number of teachers, last week we were in traditional program or in person, we were 69, now we're 49. In Quest, we were 99, now we're down to 43.5. Again, looking at elementary, middle, and high. So from 168 total vacancies, all levels, down to 92.5. So again, just tremendous progress. 4 days, I guess, work days, if you looked at Thursday, Friday, Monday, Tuesday, today. So just really amazing. And our teachers have really responded. You know, we talked about paying a little bit extra for giving up your plan period and teaching during the plan period. And folks have really stepped up to the plate there and helped us out. And so Dr. Riswick helped me with this number. What I was looking at a minute ago was the text, just trying to give you updated numbers. But as I'm looking at that there were initially 22,388 classes virtually, and now we're down to 311.
Correct. So we had, if I could, so it's a huge improvement. So we had 5,597 high school students request virtual total. And if you figure they each have 4 classes, that is, to Mr. Thomas's point, 22,388 classes we have to cover if you think of each student taking 4 classes. And at this point, to Mr. Thomas's point, we only have 311 of those classes that would be going to Florida Virtual School. So,
And the cost around $300,000.
correct, over 300,000 as opposed
To 1.9.
right,
Yeah,
right, that
about
we thought we
1.
might be at last week, so,
So,
correct.
so again, just to compliment the staff on the hard work that they've done over a short period of time. And that's what we said, preferably we want to use our own folks. So, I just think the whole point of it is Florida Virtual would be using a lot less, maybe even less than what we're talking about right now by the time school starts.
That's wonderful. Great progress, guys. Very good. Okay, Ms. Owen?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would just like to point out something with these numbers first. This is right in line with where we've been in the past on the first day of school. I was looking at something a couple of days ago where the first day of school, we still had 50 certified vacancies in 2015. So we have 49 right now, and it's definitely not the first day of school. So those are the in-person classes. And to have 43 and a half in a program that is completely brand new, that's fairly remarkable. I would like to make a suggestion. I know that we were very concerned about requiring our teachers to not be teaching both, and we use the word simultaneous, but I want to be very clear that I mean all at the same time, in person and virtually. However, we have some teachers who are very willing and feel that they are capable of doing that. And I would hope that we could look at offering a stipend to those folks, just like we would if they were giving up a plan time. What I'm seeing from a lot of teachers is they are saying, well, I have 4 classes and I have 30 and 30 in my in-person classes, and I have 18 and 18 in my online classes. If that were spread out into something that was happening simultaneously, they could have 4 classes, but divide those students out throughout the day. That would allow for distancing in their in-person classroom, and it would spread out those numbers so that their classes were more even. So if there was a way to look at teachers who are willing to do that, I know we have some who are already doing that. If we could look at offering a stipend to those who would be capable and want to do that, I think that would be terrific.
Yes, I'll be glad to get with our team and see if we can't make that work.
I think that would help a lot. Thank you.
And I know just the other day, I know a teacher asked to do that. The concern initially was, it's hard enough teaching in person, and then to ask you to do virtual while you're doing in person. We just didn't want to put that kind of demand on our teachers. But you're right, we've had some teachers who have said, hey, I want to do that. So I think we can certainly look at that and hopefully make it work.
Thank you. I know specifically our ELL teachers are very concerned. They know these students, they've been in class with their students, and they want to continue that relationship, and they feel very comfortable doing that. I have some questions about the contract, Mr. Dupler, if I may. First, on the first page, it says that the contract is for global school licenses and that there will be full credit courses or half credit courses with certified teachers. Do we know where those certifications come from? Will they have certifications that are comparable to Tennessee certifications and licensure?
Good.
Yes, Mr. Dupler.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Ms. Owen. I'm going to defer to Mr. Ryswick if he doesn't mind, because I mean, he and I and Shannon Jackson worked together on this, and I was doing mostly, just putting what they wanted into this form. So go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So it's a good question. We have had, Ms. Jackson and I have had conversations with both the state board this week as well as Lisa Kuntz at the State Department. And so they will be required to have Tennessee certification. So we have 2 possibilities for that. One is Florida Virtual School has agreed to try to hire Tennessee teachers to be able to do that, who already have Tennessee certifications. And then for those who can't, they'll be able to apply. We've already talked again to both the state board and the State Department to get those licensures. So say they are certified in Georgia or Florida or somewhere else, there's some reciprocity for some of that licensure. But we would get them certified, or the State Department would then have them certified to teach those courses for us in Tennessee.
Do we have any concerns that we could lose teachers that we have who are currently on leave to this program?
I probably couldn't answer that question. I may be a better one for HR. I don't know for sure on that one.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Dupler, looking at the second page, and I don't have one on every page, but looking at the second page, I'm concerned about the timelines that are listed here. I do understand that it says that it will be $1.5 million per year, but then it could also be $3 million per year, depending on additional services. And those services seem to be provided and then approved, which is concerning to me, that we could have some additional services occurring throughout. I would like to see something that says all services should have prior approval or they would not be paid. This looks like an opportunity to nickel and dime some revenue from us, frankly. Then we also, in number 6, have a piggyback clause, which allows other agencies to also use this. And if we are not already piggybacking on something else in the state, where's the RFP? When did this go out for proposals? How did we come to this contract if it's not already a piggyback contract?
Mr. Dupler.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Ms. Owen. So Ms. Owen, you're right about the amounts. I mean, the amounts are not set at this point. The intention with this particular form was to provide some example amounts, and I think the 1.5 million came from the discussion last week as opposed to this week. So I think that portion could possibly change in negotiations with Florida Virtual, and then the 3 million was just there as a worst case scenario type of thing. So this contract is meant to be what I would say more of a term contract, which would mean that you can enter into business with this company, but you don't know the exact amount until the administration and the company work out what that amount's going to be. And that's all going to be based upon how many students are using the service. So based upon what we've heard tonight, it's going to be significantly less even than that 1.5. So this contract will allow whatever amount needs to be spent, but I mean, we can certainly tweak it a little bit to even show a little bit less. As far as the piggyback clause goes, where this originated, this is actually a form that was used by Metro Nashville. And we looked at using Metro Nashville's contract because it had this piggyback clause. And the problem was Metro Nashville is using a slightly different version of the Florida Virtual. They are using Florida Virtual, but using it in a different manner because I believe they're completely virtual. Yes. So we could not use this. We could not piggyback off of Metro for that reason. So what we did was we contacted Knox County Procurement to make sure that this was okay, and instituted more of an emergency procedure so that this could be in place if needed for this particular semester. So that was the thought behind it. And then we continued to use the same type of form that Metro used with the intent that we could provide Florida Virtual with something that they were familiar with and something that they might approve as well.
Okay. I have one other concern there, but based on what you have said, it also concerns me that if Knox County Procurement has agreed that this is an emergency situation, when we get down to the signature line, Knox County Procurement is not here. So I think it is important, if Knox County Procurement agrees that this is an emergency situation, that we have that signature that they fully understand. what we are agreeing to. The reason the money concerns me so much is that when we get down to number 12 on page 3 and the termination of funding, actually, that may not be exactly where it is. Wherever the severability is, oh, there it is. The next one, number 13. The termination for convenience, it very clearly says we can terminate the contract at any time with 30 days notice, but the termination date will be at the conclusion of a semester. So even if we got into this contract, let's say we've had our students in the class for a week and we determine that this is not in their best interest, we can terminate that contract, but we still get to pay it till the end of the semester, if I'm reading that correctly. Is that correct, Mr. Dupler?
Well, so I don't believe it works. I mean, I'll ask John Reiswick's help on this again, but it's my understanding that the way it works is that the program has to be ongoing for at least 2 weeks before they start charging for a student. But with that caveat, I mean, I would say yes, that once a student has been committed, so to speak, to this program, I think in part, like it says, for the best interest of the student. I mean, if you've gone 2 weeks down into the material, then continue with that for that semester. So yes, I mean, that's how it reads. I agree.
All right, thank you. The next place I have a concern, of course, the maintenance of records, but the hold harmless indemnification on page 6 says that we agree to hold each other harmless, including for negligent or intentional acts or omissions of either party. And it concerns me that we would have a hold harmless clause that includes negligent or intentional acts.
Go ahead, Mr. Dupler.
Number 23.
That also says to the extent permitted by law.
Okay.
Tennessee law doesn't allow us to hold them harmless for those acts.
Okay. Are they fully aware of that?
I don't know if they are or not, but I mean, that's where we are on it.
All righty. All right. Then if we can move way forward. Somewhere here. In the second part, in Exhibit A, it's the student data use and security. We are agreeing to provide student data, student personal information, and of course, we do that often with many contracts that we have. But the list of data that can be obtained by them or that could be provided by us is fairly vast, much more than I have seen in other contracts. It includes food purchases, political affiliations, religious information, email, text messages, network, internet, or cellular communications, documents, drawings, artworks, biometric records, voice recordings, handwriting, computer device identifiers, and geolocation data. That's quite a lot to include. Also, something that we are to include is Social Security number, something that we don't even have at our schools, and disciplinary records. Then when we get down to the next paragraph, the de-identified data, it's talking about data that, when it is used or when it's returned, here are the things that will be redacted, basically. All of those things are not listed. And I realize it's not meant to be an inclusive list, but if we're going to have a contract that so very clearly lists the kinds of things they can use, but so lightly touches on the kinds of things that they would redact, I would consider that very concerning.
Okay, yeah, so I can respond to that as well. So Ms. Owen, you're correct that that's quite an exhaustive list, and not every contract has that exhaustive list. I think that this form took the time to list out a lot of things that people might not otherwise think about. But FERPA, that particular federal law, and other laws, there's also a companion law in Tennessee that further extends the federal law. But all that would be considered personally identifiable information, or PI as they abbreviate it. So, it's just listing out examples of it. And if any of that data, all that data is PI, and all that, according to the law, would have to be redacted before anything could be produced as far as requested. So,
But it could be collected.
It's not saying that it will be collected. It's just giving examples of the type of data that may be collected. I think some of this, particularly with regard to things like computer/device identifiers, is going to come up in that virtual setting. And I think that's why they took the time to list some of those things.
I
But
understand
it doesn't mean that it will.
The biometric records especially concern me, because biometric records can be something like keystrokes. It could be camera photos when you knew or didn't know that the camera was on. Biometric data is used to determine how a person is interacting with the computer. And so that may open our students to a level of intrusion that we should very much be aware of. Biometric data can track everything you are doing, everything from how long it takes you to type a sentence to whether you are blinking regularly. So those are things I have great concerns with when we are looking at someone using those for any kind of tracking, whether it's just for their own data or otherwise. We're talking about our students being put in that situation. And that greatly concerns me about this contract. Thank you.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes, Madam Chair, thank you. One thing I wanted to say too, when I talked about the vacancies, then just a reminder that school begins on August 24th, in person and virtual. It'll be half a day, and the plan is to open, looking at our reopening plan, is to open in yellow, and that is still the plan. So it seems like there's maybe some word going around there otherwise, but just please be reminded we're in yellow and we'll be in school on August 24th.
Thank you for clearing that up for us. All right. Any other questions on this contract? Ms. Hill?
Thank you for that, Mr. Thomas. There has been a lot of speculation, so I appreciate you clarifying that. And also just for clarification, because I know we received a lot of concerns that we were not reaching out to our own people first, and clearly your numbers indicate that that has been done. So is it a fair statement to say that, and maybe this is for Mr. Bolton, that's certainly your decision, that our teachers that went on administrative leave without pay, and our teachers that may have resigned or retired early because of all this, that the majority of them have been contacted if there was a vacancy that was needed?
And let me, I see Scott jumped on here, so let me let Mr. Bolton respond to that.
Hey, Scott. Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so a little bit of, to kind of clarify the question first, Madam Chair, that's you, the words good to see you all. So the problem with the, can you hear me now?
Yes,
Okay.
thank you, Tanya.
Okay, so the problem with opening that up when you're talking about people that are on leave and giving them the option to apply for Quest is difficult. I think it's a great question. The problem with that are Quest positions are not permanent positions. Quest positions are temporary due to funding. We have 18,000 students that have elected for online instruction this semester. So we don't have any, I mean, you know, it could drop to 2,000 next semester. And so part of that, those are temporary positions. So a person that's currently on leave is in a permanent position. And so in order to transition from leave to that Quest position, it would require them to forfeit their permanent position and send, you know, as a resignation or something like that. And I wouldn't encourage people to do that, but that's what it would take in order to transition to a Quest position. I will say this though, a number of our teachers that have medical concerns that have reached out to us by way of our reasonable accommodation procedure. We have been able to work with those folks in scheduling when best possible to try to accommodate their needs as suggested by their physician. Does that answer your question?
It does. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Scott. Ms. Bounds?
Yes. I was just going to say, given the large volume of emails that we all received urging a vote against this contract and outsourcing, I commend our staff and for all of their hard work in trying to fill these positions. And I think it's obvious from the numbers that you all worked very hard in the last 4 days to do that. And so I would just encourage some of the same people that urged us to vote against this outsourcing contract to email the superintendent and his staff and tell them, job well done. So it's always easier to complain than to compliment.
Yes, ma'am. Great. Any other comments or questions? Okay. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? No. Okay. Ms. Owen votes no. Motion carries 8-1.
Item 10A, approve fiscal year 2021 capital budget line item transfer in the amount of $330,000 from the PPU account to the Tipton Station Road crossing and land acquisition account.
We have a motion by Ms. Christie, a second by Mr. Norman. Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries.
10B, approve the schematic design for the new Adrian Burnett Elementary School by Johnson Architecture.
We have a motion by Ms. Bounds, a second by Mr. Norman. Discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries.
10C, approve increase to the number of credits awarded for Structural Systems 1.
We have a motion by Mr. Norman, a second by Ms. Satterfield. Discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries.
10D, approve memorandum of understanding with Knox County Education Association as recommended by the Collaborative Conferencing Management Team for a period of 3 years.
We have a motion by Ms. Owen, a second by Mr. Norman. Discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries.
Item 10E, approve resolution urging suspension of mandatory state student testing and student growth teacher evaluations for school year 2020-2021.
We have a motion by Mr. Norman and a second by lots of people. Let's give it to Ms. Satterfield. I think I heard her the loudest. We all second this one. Discussion. Okay. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Ms. Babb, we'll have public forum now.
Tanya Coates. Please state your name and county of residence. Tanya Coates, Knox County, President of the Knox County Education Association. Madam Chair and board and all who are listening, I cannot say thank you enough. Okay, it's going to fall, and I didn't break it, so because I can't afford to pay for this, our salary. Okay, there. I just want to say thank you in regards to first about the resolution in supporting teachers and students across Knox County. You all know too well that these unprecedented times has caused us many challenges, and just having this added burden of getting ready for a one-day test, a moment in time, It takes a lot of time and energy to make sure our students are prepared for that. So the educators had a roaring sound that this resolution is going to go to the state board, and hopefully they will pass a policy to support this resolution. I know this will not be the only resolution across the state of Tennessee. As Knox County, we like to be the first and the fastest to make sure that we're doing it first for our students, and not only for our students, but for the educators in Knox County. And this is needed. COVID has showed us a lot of challenges that we have. And then secondly, I want to say thank you again for the commitment you have made for the educators of Knox County in regards to approving the amendment, a memorandum of understanding between the Knox County Education Association and the board. I know this has been a lengthy process that we have went through, but just know that this is the second time that you have approved a contract before the current contract expires. And we continuously want to have a working relationship with Knox County School Board. As you know, that you have 9 people that represent you as it relates to working conditions and the 7 other things that we talk about. But just know that your hard work and the people that represent you is the administration. They sit and talk on your behalf, and we collaborate with the educators across Knox County. And some of these challenges that we are presenting before that you all know too well is that we don't get paid enough. But just you should know this. You have made a concerted effort to actually raise our salaries. In the last 5 years that we've had a contract, we have went from just those that are comparable to us. If you think about Williamson County, Davidson County, and things, and those counties like that, we have went from being 11th to number 4 in raising our teacher salary. Now, do we have a way to go? Yes, because we as Knox County, we want to be number 1 in our district. But it's also going to take the community. So I want to say here that COVID shows the challenge about some of the resources that students desperately need in the classroom. And with this continued collaboration with your educators across Knox County, again, I can't say thank you enough to all of us, from all of us, and knowing that we're continuing to work on this commitment to make sure that we are not only supporting the students in Knox County, but you're supporting the educators as well. And so thank you. Becca Edwards. If you'll just state your name and county of residence, and you'll have 5 minutes to speak.
Becca Edwards, Knox County. Thank you, Madam Chair and school board members. I come to you today on behalf of the group of parents of Knox County students with disabilities who circulated a letter encouraging Knox County Schools to reconsider its reopening plan regarding students with disabilities. Our effort garnered over 800 signatures, and we are optimistic that our efforts will continue to cause KCS to be attentive to the unique needs of students with disabilities. We appreciate that the reopening plan will allow families to make informed decisions to attend school virtually or in person after IEP teams have had an opportunity to meet. We also appreciate that opt-in virtual learners will be given access to on-campus in-person services if determined appropriate by the IEP team. Our focus now turns to a necessary understanding of what options are authorized by KCS for IEP teams to consider when discussing supports and services described in the student's individualized education plans. We want to ensure that every child has access to the curriculum, and a portion of students with disabilities will not have this access if there is a shift to virtual learning. In other words, the reopening plan does not provide for the education of some of our most vulnerable students on red days. The following is the forthcoming updated guidance from the Tennessee Department of Education as provided by the Director of Media at TDOE. If a local district moves to remote learning, the IEP team should meet to discuss the way in which services will be provided remotely and update the IEP as needed. For some students, however, the IEP team might determine that the student is unable to access instruction remotely. The team should consider whether a change in placement is warranted, which could include homebound instruction. IEP teams might also consider bringing small groups into the school for face-to-face instruction, with careful attention made to safety precautions.
Please note that the KCS reopening plan precludes the possibility of services continuing to be provided in person if the district or the student school is on a red day. In other words, the plan runs afoul of the Department of Education's guidance. Our son Benton is certainly one of the students who is unable to access instruction remotely. Benton has autism and is nonverbal, and like last spring, will receive no services and support under the reopening plan if KCS shifts to red days. With Benton's IEP team meets to develop a contingency plan in the event of an all-virtual learning district-wide shift or a shift at his school, how will KCS staff members on the IEP team know what KCS will permit without clarity in the reopening plan? The state guidance clearly outlines that service delivery configurations are a local decision, but an IEP team certainly cannot make a decision to, say, send a one-to-one aide into the home or have that child and others with disabilities attend school with careful attention made to safety precautions unless the IEP team knows what KCS will permit with respect to services and support. IEP teams are meeting across the district. However, they are meeting without adequate guidance. The following are a few open questions. How will students with profound disabilities access the curriculum? How will we educate these students? What menu of services and supports are available if the district or school is on a red day under the reopening plan? What happens to an aide that has already been funded and hired based on the IEP? How is that aide to provide the service through a computer for a student here who is clearly unable to access instruction or support remotely? What happens to that position and the funding? You cannot simply leave it up to the IEP teams without informing parents and educators of the available options. We understand that each plan is individualized, but the decisions made to meet the unique needs of our individual children require the menu of district-approved possibilities. That is what we are asking you to do. We know what will happen to our kids without disabilities, and leaving it entirely up to the IEP team to decide absolutely any service delivery configuration is short-sighted at best and discriminatory in effect at worst. If it is left to the IEP teams, they may be forced to issue plans that cannot be implemented because KCS has failed to consider fully the services and supports that students with disabilities will require. We respectfully request that KCS amend the reopening plan to provide more clarity with respect to students with disabilities and provide an opportunity for in-person services even on red days in accordance with the Department of Education guidelines. Please do not leave these vulnerable children without access to service and supports. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes public forum.
Thank you, Ms. Babb, and that concludes our meeting. Meeting adjourned. Thank you.